Hello YouTube, now since Ayato's rerun is out right now and we recently just got the new Anemo DPS character Wanderer, this is a perfect time to reboot this series and make another new versus old and basically compare these two to see which one might be better for you and your account. Before I get onto the video though, did you guys know that almost 95% of you guys aren't subbed? I'm literally dying over here, so if you enjoy the videos, maybe toss a sub. It helps out the channel a lot and makes me happy because I see a little number go up and you know, bigger number, better person. Alright, onto the video. Now, before I start comparing them, I want to start off explaining why I picked these two characters. See, me personally, I think Ayato and Scarra are kind of exactly the same. They both deal most of their damage on their normal attacks and have kind of the same elemental skill which buffs your normal attacks to do even more damage. They also kind of build the same teams, except Scarra would use Farazan and Ayato would use someone like Kazuha for Hydro Swirling. First off, I'm going to be talking about Ayato. Now, I did just make a video on whether you should pull on Ayato's rerun, which you should watch and link in the description. So if you want a more in-depth Ayato sort of explanation, you can watch that video. But first off, his kit. Now, his normals are nothing special, kind of just typical normal attacks that don't really deal that much damage. But his elemental skill is where 99% of his damage comes from. When you use your skill, he infuses normal attacks with Hydro that lets him do 15 large AoE Hydro slashes within a 6-second period. His cooldown for his elemental skill is 12 seconds, but starts when you activate your skill. So technically, it's a 6-second cooldown if you slash every time in his skill, but we'll talk about that later. His ult lays down a large area which rains down Hydro droplets, applying Hydro and dealing damage to whoever it hits. He also gets a normal attack bonus in this field based on how high the burst is leveled up to. Aside from his kit, he's also one of the easiest characters to play. All you really do is press your elemental skill and hold down your normal attack button. Occasionally you would burst from time to time, but in the open world, you're probably never going to use it. Alright, get this old character out of here. Now let's talk about Scarra. First off, I've been playing him for the past couple weeks, and I gotta say, he's actually really fun. Now, I swear to God, they make these characters more confusing as time goes on, but regardless of that, his elemental skill changes his normal stamina bar to something called Kugo Ryoku points. The skill ends when you expend all your points, but the only thing that actually consumes it is dashing. If you do normal and charge attacks, it won't actually use up any of the points. The bar does go down over time though, so you're not going to be in it forever. Without a Hydro Infusion, it's going to last around 9 seconds, and with a Hydro Infusion, it's going to last around 12. But before I go any further, I want to talk about his dashing. When you ascend into level 70, you get something called a descent effect. When you hit an enemy in your elemental skill state, it gives you a 16% chance of gaining this effect, which shoots out 4 projectiles that do 35% of your attack when you dash and doesn't consume I hate this word, I swear to God. If you don't get the descent effect the first time, it'll give you another 12% chance every time you hit an opponent. His ult compresses the atmosphere into a singular vacuum and hits the enemies 5 times and takes him out of his elemental skill state if you're still in it. So preferably, and what you should do is ulting as soon as your Kugo Ryoku bar is about to end and not waste any time, and you'll just deal more damage overall. Trust me. Alright, now those are their kits. Now onto their pros and cons. First off, Ayato. Like I said earlier, in my previous video, I kinda already talked about all of his pros, but to reiterate, Ayato is a very easy character to build while having a lot of access to many different teams like Vape, Freeze, Hyper, and with the addition of Dendro, Bloom teams like Burgeon and Hyper Bloom, which is probably one of the best teams he has now if you build it correctly. When it comes to building, he uses 4 different artifact sets very comfortably and has some really good weapon options as well, which I'm not going to get into so hard in this video, but if you're curious, here they are. Alright, enough of Ayato. I've literally covered him in so many other videos. Now we're on to Scarra. When it comes to artifacts, Scarra's pretty versatile with them as well. 4-piece Shim, 2-piece Verdescent, and 2-piece 18% attack like Zhao, and his best in slot, 4-piece Desert Pavilion Chronicle. When it comes to weapons, pretty much any 5-star option could work on him, except for Kokomi's Donut You know what, actually, it does increase normal attack damage, so if you want to be a troll, then I guess you can run that weapon. Widsith is going to be his best 4-star option, but if you buy the Battle Pass, Solar Pearl is alright as well. If you're an OG and somehow don't have one Widsith, then Dodoko Tales from the first Golden Apple Archipelago event is also a pretty good option. If somehow you don't have any of those, I guess the best craftable one would probably be Mappa Mare, which is alright, but it's not really that good in my opinion. Alright, building aside, I want to talk about the similarities between him and Wanderer. Nope, not Wanderer. Him and Ayato, sorry. First off, they're both normal attack on-field DPS characters. Scarra's max uptime on his skill is around 9 seconds, and Ayato's is 6, but they both kinda have the same 6-second downtime on their skill, which makes them have a similar playstyle as well. Secondly, their teams. Now, in my opinion, Scaramouche is really a hyper carry unit that depends on Bennett and Farazan. If you don't run either of them, he'll do significantly less damage, which is kind of annoying because it sort of forces you to use him in this one specific team comp, especially if you kind of want him to do damage. But back onto the topic, Ayato and Scarra's hyper carry teams consist of essentially the same characters. Since Scarra's Anemo though, and you can't swirl Anemo, Farazan will act as resistant shred and give Anemo damage bonus based on her ult's talent level, which is kind of exactly like Kazuha's A4 passive, which gives your team elemental damage bonus depending on whatever element he swirls based on his elemental mastery. The last unit is probably going to be Yunjin, but for Scarra, I think Zhongli would be better. He'll be doing less normal attack than he would with Yunjin, but the resistance shred and the shield kinda make up for it. And that's kinda where the similarities end. Now onto their individual points. First off, Skara. Because of his unique kit, he's one of, if not the only character in the game that can move and attack simultaneously, which gives him a pretty fluid playstyle. His charge attack is pretty cool as well, since it doesn't consume stamina and has a pretty large AoE. When you're fighting hordes of enemies, spamming charge attack will deal a shit ton of AoE damage. Since he has low cooldowns as well, it makes his rotation pretty quick and gives him a lot of on-field uptime. His first passive as well also gives you stats depending on what element you swirl when you enter your win-favored state. Hydro gives you 20 more Kugo Ryoku points, which gives you around 3 more seconds in his flying state. Pyro increases your attack by 30%, Cryo gives you 20% crit rate, which makes him much easier to build as well, and Electro gives him a set amount of energy every time he hits an opponent, which is probably his worst one. As for the open world, he's also amazing to fly around and explore because he flies at supersonic speed. If you have Seiun and Yuan, you literally have the best exploration team in the game right now. Trust me, I 100%ed every area with just those 2 characters, and a Skara on top of that? Jeez, I could probably do it so much faster. And those are all the pros I can think of. Next up, his cons. Now I talked about this earlier, but if you're running him in Hyper, which is his best team, you kinda need Bennett and Farazan. If even one of those are missing, you lose out on a huge chunk of your damage, and to me, it's not even worth playing him in Spiral. If you have another team that doesn't use either Bennett or whoever you put in your flex slot like Zhongli, Venti, or Yunjin if you decide to use her, then it doesn't really matter that much to you. But if you have a team that depends on Bennett, like International for example, then you probably won't be able to run both teams. Another con is how he can get knocked out of his flying state with literally a pebble. It makes it really frustrating when you're trying to fight a horde of enemies and just one of them isn't in your range and hits you from far away. God, it's so annoying. Next up is his low base health and defense. Now this is probably taken into consideration because you're supposed to run him with a shield, but that just makes him a little squishier than most. If I swap over all my artifacts to someone like my Xiao who's the same level, he has 3,000 more health. Alright, onto Ayato's pros and cons. Pro number 1, he's a very easy character to play. Given that his abilities are all pretty straightforward, he doesn't really require that much knowledge and is kinda just a brain off sort of character. His next pro would probably be his teams. Now I guess you can debate in the comments, but since Ayato's Hydro instead of a neutral element like Anemo, he has access to significantly more teams than Skara. Now since I've only been playing Skara for a couple weeks, he's really fun to play for now, but since I really have to run him in kinda the same team and require Farazan, I wouldn't really be surprised if I get bored of him later down the line. Ayato on the other hand has so many different teams to play and has a very different feel to his playstyle when I swap it up and use something like a Hyper Boom team. He's also probably going to be better in the long run. Since a lot of teams in the game require Hydro units, there's going to be a lot of characters in the future that would want to use someone like Ayato in their party. Next would probably be his AoE. Now yeah, Skara does have some pretty good AoE damage, and due to the nature of Anemo, he can also swirl and get even more damage in. When it comes to range though, Ayato essentially hits everyone in front of him and has some pretty good sustained damage as well. The last pro is probably going to be his flexibility in teams. Every team I talked about was him as a main on-field DPS, but if you run him on 4-piece emblem or something, you can run him as a sub burst DPS, applying Hydro, albeit not that well, and dealing some off-field damage. Something like an Ayaka Ayato team is pretty fun, even though it's not really optimal, but that doesn't matter because I'm having a good time. In conclusion, Ayato and Skara have their own pros and cons. It's actually been a pretty hard question to answer when people ask me whether they should pull on one or the other. If you want a single character to be hyper carrying and deal like basically 100% of the damage on your team, then maybe go Skara. If you like the feeling of swapping teams a lot and want to try out some Dendro teams, then I would probably say pull for Ayato. Long story short, there isn't one better pull. Whoever you like more is the one you should pull for, even though personally I think Ayato is the better pull. Not biased at all, but that's basically about it. If you disagree with anything I said in the video, post it down in the comments. I will have arguments. I'm literally gonna start drama in the comment section. Come at me. Anyways, if you enjoyed, a sub to the channel is greatly appreciated and helps out a lot. As I'm recording this video as well, Alhaitham comes out tomorrow along with the last area of Sumeru. So if you guys want to watch me explore the new map and test out Alhaitham, the links are going to be down below. And that's it. Goodbye.